Welcome to the Let's Go Guided podcast, where we bring you inside the world of guided hunting through real conversations with outfitters. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Go Guided. Today we're headed way up into the Yukon with Russ from Tombstone Outfitters, operating in one of the most remote and wild regions left in North America. We're talking true wilderness hunting in the Tombstone Mountains, chasing species like Dall sheep, moose, caribou, and grizzly in big, unforgiving country where everything is earned. If you've ever wondered what a real Yukon hunt is all about, this one's going to take you there. Russ, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks.
I appreciate it. I'm so looking forward to this one because you have some of the most sought after species in North America in your territory. And we're going to get into all of those. But before we go there, run us through where you got started in hunting. How old were you? How did it all come to be?
So I grew up farm kid, kind of central British Columbia. Grew up chasing critters and figured out pretty early on, I had no family in the industry. I didn't know anybody in the industry. It was just kind of a sitting on horseback, chasing cows, wanting to go hunting and couldn't figure out how to do it. So, I started, connected up with an outfitter when I was probably 14, and I'd skip school and go pack moose meat just in the interior.
Nice.
And yeah, so I did that until I got done high school. And then, that was kind of before internet was a thing. So I walked into the BC government environment office and they had a little booklet of outfitters. And then I flipped to the page that had the farthest away from where I lived and just started making phone calls and landed up wrangling in Yukon and then kind of forgot to leave. And that's it all went downhill from there. So.
Wow. And how old were you when you did that?
So that was, I guess, 18, 19 when I graduated and kind of got my feet under me. And that was kind of, as soon as I was old enough. I mean, you have to be 18 to hold a guide's license in the Yukon at that time, I believe. So that was, I came up as a wrangler and kind of grew into it pretty much the second year I was starting to do moose hunts and then off I went. I'm kind of a sheep for brains guy. So I was in a pretty big sheep operation. So it quickly turned into just 5 or 6 sheep hunts a year and living the dream. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. And what about the off season? What were you doing, or what do you do up in the Yukon when you're not guiding?
So I didn't have an off season when I started. I would leave from Yukon and I'd go guide deer hunters, kind of Alberta. Chase deer till December. The guy I worked for, he also had bison hunts and winter work, so I'd come back, guide bison hunts, then I'd either do spring grizzly bear or black bear, depending on if we had grizzly bear hunts booked, or I'd go to British Columbia and guide for guys for spring black bear. Yeah. And then we typically started doing camp work kind of mid-June. So I really only had, a few, maybe a month off in total, just kind of fill in the gaps. Hey? So yeah, within that time off, I went and got my farrier certificate. So I'm a horseshoer and kind of went down that road, as well as, also in the off season, I picked up an airplane and started flying and kind of did all the things that you kind of need to do to be in this business. And it's paid off pretty well. So
was the vision always to have your own outfit?
Yeah, I like shoeing horses, but it's a tough way to make a living. And I flew commercially. Like I got my private license because I knew, oh man, I was 24, 25. So I got my license because I didn't want to buy an outfit and then try to start to fly at that point because it seemed to be backwards. So I started flying and then, every year outfits went up by $1 million up here, it seemed. So it just was the barrier to entry was tough. So then I ended up going commercial, buying a Super Cub and flying commercially for an outfitter that also had a flying service. So then I would fly and guide and kind of add it all onto one pile, but same program. Yeah. I like flying, but I didn't want to fly 12 months a year. I wanted to guide. So that was just another tool to, be more valuable. Hey?
Nice. And how did Tombstone all come about?
So, I mean, that's kind of a longer story, but Tombstone was one of the few available. Some friends of mine that had bought it needed someone to buy in, and so I ended up buying into it with a group that bought Tombstone. And then, as kind of the business progressed, two of the partners wanted out, and so I've ended up just myself and one business partner that
Nice. And
now have it.
how many years ago was that?
So initially, it was right around COVID, so 2021.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Yes, 20. Yeah, that sounds about right, eh? 21.
Yeah. The fun time, right?
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah, wearing masks and riding horse with latex gloves, and it was pretty ridiculous, but I don't know.
Oh, that's fair. So what drew you to picking up the outfit in Yukon? What is it about that area that attracts you so much?
Well, honestly, there's not a bad area in Yukon. Like there's different areas.
Mhm.
So for me, it wasn't like I needed this one. I just needed one. I looked at a few areas, kind of interior British Columbia and other places, but they just didn't scratch my itch. I like the far more remote, kind of the more complicated outfits to operate from a logistical standpoint, but also because this is home, and for me to buy one elsewhere. I mean, I've been here since I was 19, so to to buy one somewhere else would be and pack up and relocate. I mean, I live in Dawson, um, just to be close. I mean, I'm 30 yards from the edge of the hunting area, and my trap line that I've since acquired is half my hunting concession. So I spend now, other than hunting shows, I spend 300 days a year in the area. Um, yeah,
Fantastic.
so that's kind of the lifestyle portion of the business. It's not quite as much fun as you'd imagine, running logistics and staff and all the challenges that come with that. So
You mean it's not just out hunting
yeah,
24/7?
yeah, that's the dream, right? But the winter is kind of my time to go play. Like right now, this time of year, and spring, I'm just snowmobiling and outfitting camps and supplying with horse feed and building materials and everything we need. So, I spend probably better part of 2 months just doing winter prep as the weather allows and the snow conditions to put trails into camps and stock them. We don't have lakes, very few lakes in my area. So everything's small airstrips. So getting any volume of supplies and is really costly and really time consuming with an airplane. So, it's easier to grab a few buddies and daisy chain skimmers and just move gear. Hey?
Okay. Okay. So how do you guys build those remote airstrips? What's that look like?
One stick at a time. Like
Yeah.
literally, depending on where they are. Like, I mean, mostly just by hand, pulling willows and pulling sticks and
Okay.
clearing brush and make them. I make them big enough that I can land the first time and then bring more stuff in and bring more crew in, because it's a great way to wear out 19-year-old kids. Is drop them off with a bunch of groceries and some shovels and pick them up when it's better.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, that's most of them. We don't have much for timber in this country, so it's mostly find a place that's kind of almost smooth enough and then make it better. But yeah, mostly just hand removing and maybe a brush saw and a little chainsaw for the approaches, and that's about it. So
Okay. You talked about logistics being way up north. What's it look like from client standpoint to get up to you?
easy enough to get here. Like Air North is a public charter. Vancouver's the mainstay for them. They'll do 3 flights a day to Whitehorse, and then Whitehorse will have in the summer usually 2 trips a day to Dawson. And
Okay.
then currently we pick everybody up in Dawson. They spend a night in town and get to kind of feel the vibe, and then somebody, myself or my wife or one of my staff, will pick them up and bump them down and get them on a bush plane and fly in from there. So it's just time. Like it's a bit tricky. Most of these guys, it takes you probably 3 days, realistically 2 to 3 days to get here. So it's a bit
Okay.
of a journey from kind of anywhere in the US to get
Yep.
to Dawson. But once you're here, that's the treat of it as well, right? So it's just the time to get here.
And what do the hunts look like for the guys then? So they get into Dawson, then they're heading out on a super cub or?
Yeah, Super Cub. So I'm in the middle right now of starting my own commercial flying service too. So that's kind of new. Hopefully this year I'll be licensed to charter all my own. But right now there's a local charter that does it. And it's in a small tailwheel bush plane with Tundra tires and kind of similar to a Cub.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and then one guy at a time, groceries and food, and all my guys are in camp. Whether I run about 30, well, give or take 34, 35 horses. So we have 3 or 4 strings, and then we do individual camps. So everybody gets their own block, and then depending where I'm finding game, we chase them over the mountain to a spike camp, or they hunt right from where they are. And they're all one-on-one 10-day hunts. Usually it's 1-on-2. There's a guide and a wrangler, or a guide and a pack, or if they're on a backpack hunt, try and make sure we have enough staff to support the clients. This country's pretty rough. It looks really, really nice, but it's soft and squishy and hard walking, and
Oh, okay.
tends to play people out pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah. That tundra life, right?
Yeah.
So we've got a whole bunch of different species to talk about here. Which one's your favorite? What do we want to start with?
I'm a sheep junkie. So,
Yeah.
on I'm how do I say it? The sheep conversation here is interesting. So one of the earlier owners, Pete Jensen, used to tell me when he was outfitting here that all these sheep were starting to get black hairs, and he didn't know what was happening to his Dall sheep, and it was going to mess up his Dall sheep hunting. And now with the invention of Grand Slam's a big advocate of the fanning sheep.
Yep.
So I don't think we don't ever take a white ram anymore. They all have dark hair in them. They might look white from a distance, but
Yep.
every one of them's dark. Some of them are really dark. Some of them are really light. But I haven't seen one here in the last 5 years that's not had some level of color, even if it's racing stripes in its legs, etc. So that's been a big change for us, particularly in the north. And the hunting organizations and the conversation around fanning, and is it a stone sheep or is it a Dall sheep? And it's hard to flesh out that conversation, because like if you want a Dall, well, it's a Dall sheep. It's in Dall sheep country.
Yeah.
I know it's not a stone, but Boone and Crockett calls it that. So you can get a discounted stone. So it's kind of a harder conversation than it needs to be. And we're not high density country. Like this particular block it builds its own gravy. Like it's just a weather hole. Okay. So it's great summer range, but the winter range is lacking. So a lot of the sheep leave the country for the winter. So on any given year, the density tends to fluctuate on what you see, and you don't always have the luxury of finding the rams you've had last year. They might not come back to your side of the border in any given year. So it's and they're also really transient, like from guiding southern Yukon and guiding all over the Northwest Territories and BC. These sheep move more than any sheep I've ever seen. Like they will pop up, and there's really nowhere in the whole area that if I saw a ram, I would be thinking that was weird. Even though there's only 2 or 3 spots that I can go to 100% of the time and find sheep, if that makes any sense. It's
reliable.
Yeah, it's not that type of sheep hunting. So it's a lot more, you just got to go put on miles and mostly with your eyes and get up high and find sheep. And you can't really avoid looking anywhere. You've kind of got to cover all the country because they just show up where they are. And they're there today. And, if you bump them or they decide to leave, you might have to change mountains and just keep on going until you dig them out again. So yeah, it's a bit of a grind. Like full disclosure, like it's super low density, and so you can get in your head, hey. So it's kind of a little trickier hunt to sell, because you need hunters that are excited to put the effort in and have a good hunt, and they'll kill a ram. Like I'm only taking a few hunters just to make sure that everybody's being successful, right?
Okay.
But the side effect of that is if they want to see 40 or 50 sheep a day, they're not going to do that here. That's where that's at. But
now, is it one of those situations where it's not high density, but the quality and age class of the rams are going to be maybe a little bit higher than the areas that might have those 40, 50 sheep a day kind of thing?
Well, interesting. So one of my side gigs was I also ran a pretty big taxidermy shop. I've measured literally hundreds and hundreds of these. And the northern sheep, they're smaller bodied. They're significantly smaller bodied. Their skulls are smaller. So when I say measure them, their eye sockets on a skull is probably on average a quarter inch narrower than southern Yukon sheep. So they're a smaller bodied ram, much similar to like the Northwest Territories and other parts in the north. The exception to that is like kind of the main zones in southern Yukon where they're really big bodied rams. And proportionately, like we're trying to kill 10-year-old plus rams. That's my goal. I don't let clients shoot 7 and 8-year-olds, not intentionally anyways. So the age class is good, and that's kind of what drives it. And then proportionately, like they look like a great ram, their mass is proportionate to their body size. So unless you're if you're bent on 170 inches, those are the only guys that would really notice the difference. But if you want a good mature ram that looks nice, that has good mass, that carries it all, in proportion to its body, it's kind of what you get, hey?
Yeah.
And then you get the odd freak, but that's, you don't bank on that, right?
No, that's not what you're selling. That's
Yeah.
the icing, right?
Yeah, that's the dream, right? And you get it. Like we got one this year and it happens, but that's always just it is the icing on the cake. So
That's fantastic. What do you think surprises hunters most when they come out for a sheep hunt?
um good question. I mean, in this country particularly, probably how much it can rain. Like you can almost set your watch on it in August. Like we do most of our sheep hunts in August here.
Okay.
And that early season, those cells roll through, and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's been heating all day. The thunderstorms roll in, you go find a rock to hide under, and it rumbles on by, and it'll be like hurricane downpour. And 2 hours later, the sun will come back out and you'll be off to the races again. Hey, so
Yeah.
that's, you got to kind of be for that. I mean, that's all part of what you do when you're breaking the guys in and getting them mentally prepared for it. But if you spend 4 days in a deep storm, there's really nothing you can do to train a guy for that. Hey,
No, just got to ride it out.
yeah, just wait.
Hopefully you brought a book you don't mind reading 3, 4, 5 times.
Yeah, no, exactly.
What's your go-to book? If
Oh,
you recommend one for guys.
I'm just a sappy Louis L'Amour, but good old Western. But I'll usually pull the last page or two out of a Louis L'Amour and give it to a guy, and then mail him the last 2 pages at Christmas because he'll get to almost the end of the book and won't understand why it quit. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
I love that one. What's the country you guys are chasing Dalls in? Like, is it kind of more rolling hills, or is it pretty steep, nasty
No,
stuff?
this is really rugged country. Like I've switched most of my sheep hunts almost exclusively to horseback. The country, we can get around on horses okay, but it's mostly the valleys are permafrost covered with kind of moss and tundra. So it's pretty squishy. It has a bottom. You're not going to sink out of sight, but it's kind of rough going and rough getting around. The mountains aren't as big as they look. They're big and steep and pretty sharp, a lot of it, but they're not tall. Like the valley bottoms are often 4,000 feet, and the highest mountain you get is most of our stuff's not over 8. So, the bottom to the top isn't quite as far as you might think, hey?
Okay.
So,
How do you prep guys for coming into terrain like that? What are your guiding principles for fitness, or how do you help clients with that?
I mean, when we're in a phase here where the sheep hunting's harder than it used to be. So, I mean, in the early days here, it wasn't, you could get around with a horse and you could take an old guy and be a little patient, and then a ram would kind of set himself up in a place where you could get at him and you could still get it done. But those days, we haven't seen that in a couple of years, just with the numbers softening. So really I mean, I chase a lot of guys away, to be totally honest with you. And for me, it's more important that guys have a successful trip and get their ram. It's far too big of a deal to take a guy on a 14-day camping trip, right? So for me, it's more important that I meet the guys and kind of beat into their head that it's, the hardest thing they've ever done will probably be easy compared to this. And it doesn't have to be, but most certainly I overplay how hard it is just because I don't want them to come underprepared.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a memorable story of a client who struggled with it mentally and then maybe they overcame it, maybe they didn't?
Well, I mean, I hope he doesn't.
No, no names, no names.
I hope he know. I won't tell names. It's just like, you know, I I I prepared him for low density.
Okay.
And about day 2, I got a message that was saying like, "There's no sheep. What do we do if I don't kill a sheep?" And I said, "Well, it's day
Oh, no.
2.
Yeah, yeah.
We're gonna have to just tough it out. And if you're not gonna tough it out, then I'll just have to get you out of the bush and refund your money and send you home because this just isn't working out." I said, "But you should just trust the process and stay at it." And so he did stay at it. And tragically, at the end of it, he missed a ram. One ram, he missed 2 different shooting opportunities. I think he missed a total of 7 times at the end of the hunt and went home without one.
Oh, no.
After that phone call and that conversation, and then like pumping his tires, and he was a fit guy and he was a real goer. And I want to believe he had ammunition or rifle trouble. I mean, there was more to it. It was a custom gun, and he had custom bullets hand loaded by a custom bullet maker. And
Mm.
he went and stuck a bullet in and closed the bolt on it and didn't shoot it. And then he opened the bolt, and of course the bullet stayed in the lands, and the casing came out and sprayed powder everywhere. And the boys didn't know what to do, and they were panicking. So they were sending me text messages, and I was going to fly a rifle in, and they were going to have to hike back to the strip where they came from, like 2 days back, to get a gun. And
Jeez.
then they decided to wiggle the lead out of a different bullet without spilling the powder, and they threaded it in and tied the rifle to a tree and hooked a rope up to it and hid behind the rocks. Let her buck, and it cleared. So the whole thing was plagued, and I didn't know any of that part of the story. They just told me they fixed it. And then after the end of it all, the poor guy missed 3 different shot opportunities. And,
Oh, no.
one of them was a little bit far, but the other 2 were makeable. And yeah, pretty tragic end to a hard hunt, and it shouldn't have finished that way. So I don't know. There's that.
I don't even know what to pull out of there from a lesson.
Yeah, there's I don't know. Trust your outfitter and trust your guide, but
Yes.
then also, like, I don't know, feed every. I don't usually let guys go out without feeding every round they have through their gun to make sure it cycles clean,
Okay.
right? I didn't obviously do that with him because we'd have figured that out right away.
Sure.
But as when I'm out there guiding personally, I'd make sure that my client feeds everything through just to make sure it cycles. Just so you don't have these types of surprises, because the 2-day walk back to the airstrip is a pretty low when you got a perfectly good $10,000 rifle sitting in a tent, right?
Oh, that would be soul crushing, to say
Yeah.
the least. Yeah, that's a tough one. Oh, man. What's your second favorite thing to hunt in the territory?
Oh, I'm a coin flip. I love hunting grizzly bears just because they're such a mental game. But caribou are kind of probably my number 2, kind of my favorite. They're kind of a overlooked animal. They get this misnomer that they're not very intelligent, and you could make an argument they aren't. But I just love caribou, and we've got great caribou. So it's a real mountain hunt if you hunt them in August, and we hunt them a lot in August when they're just in their bachelor groups or just in their summer range. So it's a sheep hunt in style and effort, but it's a caribou at the end, right? So
Cool.
yeah, it's a pretty neat trip. So
That's neat. When people think that caribou are stupid, where does that come from? Is it from their curiosity that they see all the time?
No, I think it's because caribou don't even know what they're doing. So,
Okay.
so I don't think if they're unpredictable in that if you see a caribou somewhere, that's good, but like you're probably not going to see them again. Barring the exception that when we're hunting them in August, that's one of the reasons why we're hunting them that time of year is you can find good bulls and you can walk across the valley and up the mountain and they'll still be there. Where often once the rut starts to happen and you're hunting them in September, they're here today and gone. The odds of walking up the mountain and having them not stand where you just were
Yeah.
is as good as not, right? It's but they're also a creature of they're pretty misunderstood. I mean, they just haven't figured out rifles, right? So, they're a product of numbers more than evasive tactics, right? But
Right. So I see caribou, or a lot of guys end up taking a caribou on a sheep hunt. Um, as maybe it was just the right spot, the right time, and it was huge before they got their ram, or after they get their ram, they go off and chase it. Do you have a lot of guys that come up specifically for caribou?
yeah, and I've been pushing that. For me, it's a big part. Like I have a reasonably generous caribou quota, so everybody usually gets a caribou tag. And my area is pretty unique in that there's caribou almost everywhere. So in any given day, you can come across a real good quality bull. But that being said, I'm not in the business of selling, multi-species kills. I want guys to have good quality. It's not just about killing my quota and moving on, right? It's so that extra tag is there for if you see a real once in a lifetime or it's really something you really want to do. It's doable, but you've got to put the effort in. And the challenge I always find is on these doesn't matter what guys are hunting, they all want all the tags, but it never fails that as soon as the work gets done once, the motivation starts to drop and then they end up just not. So in order to take enough caribou and I don't know, they're a pretty neat species and they're a real hunt. And I never understood why you only wanted to hunt them as a second animal or as a side effect, right? So and the other side for me too is as my sheep numbers have softened, I've had space in my schedule to focus on it. So it's been really good for us and for the area to kind of target those extra caribou and keep my staff busy for when moose season rolls around because it's all about managing a season and the numbers of hunters that kind of keeps the right number of crew so that at the end of the day I can still be profitable so I can keep doing this, right?
Of course, 100%. How are you guys hunting the caribou in August and September? Are you getting up high and glassing down? Like, are they down in the river valleys and the basins? Or are they kind of up high? More so?
Yeah, exactly. So like I said, they don't really know where they want to be.
Okay.
But we don't have a lot of big timber. We got little pockets of intermittent timber. So the majority of these bulls, particularly in August when they're in velvet, they're high. They're up in the rocks, they're up in the snow slides, they're staying out of the bugs, and they're just trying to put on weight and be lazy, right? So generally we're hunting them right from the tops of mountains and glassing them either on the range you're on or across the valley and then,
Cool.
spot and stock. Once September rolls around, there's that little window where the real big mature bulls tend to crawl off the top of the mountain, usually at the end of August, and they kind of disappear for a while. And all those mid-range, mid-age bulls start pretending to rut, kind of early September, and they start yarding up all the cows and groups start to get bigger. But there's like a 10-day window where those real big bulls tend to just vanish.
Okay.
And then once those mediocre bulls have brought those herds and started to gather up cows, then they just run in and steal them and take off with the harem once the work's done. Hey, they're pretty intelligent about the whole process, I find.
Let the young guys do the work and then come.
Yeah. They're just there watching and waiting, and then when the time's right, then off they go. So
That's awesome. Grizzly bears. We don't have them in BC anymore, and I don't
We
want to go
lots
down
of
that
bears.
path of more. Just spend
Yeah.
too much time on that. But talk to me about hunting grizzly bears. I had the opportunity. I didn't take it. I wish I would have. Hindsight's 2020. I'll go for sure if we get it back. What about hunting grizzly bears do people not understand?
I don't. It's pretty hard to um, talk facts and science into emotion. I mean,
Mm,
there's so many facets to it. Our government's forever doing grizzly bear studies and density studies, and a lot of the, I don't want to speak out of line, but there's a lot of money being pushed north into restrictions or taking away our grizzly bear season as well. And our government's towing the line pretty steady. And, kudos to, management board. They've done a grizzly bear management plan to kind of combat some of these anti-hunting sentiments so
mhm,
that, you can't say we're just killing bears with no understanding. There is a plan, and there's a plan in place. And the outfitters were managed pretty restrictive. So we're boars and sows, but we don't target sows. Sows, the only sows that are harvested are generally by accident. And
mhm,
for sure in my area, if it's a sow, it was because somebody messed up and thought it was a boar. We're not just killing bears. And we don't have a lot of tags, but we have enough as far as available. But if we shoot a sow right out the gate, I get pretty scared to let guys kill boars because, my quota, the way it works, it's a 3-year quota.
mhm,
And we get an allocation over the 3. But for example, if you have, I'll just pick a number. Say you have 5 boars and 2 sows. Well, if you kill 2 sows, you ultimately can't kill any boars because if you mess up one more time, now you're in hot water, right?
okay.
And then the next year, any boars you don't kill prorate, they get added to your existing. And then after 3 years, it resets. That part of that system is not logical to me, but it's the system we work within. But the interesting side of it is, though, is if a tourist is driving down the Dempster Highway and drives over a bear,
Mhm.
that comes out of my quota. So, and
Really?
if a resin hunter harvests a bear, that comes out of my available quota the following year. So very easily, if a couple of sows get in trouble along the highway and raid a few hikers' camps, and the COs have to come and dispatch them,
Mm.
I could very quickly have a no bear quota just by
Oh, wow.
default. So it's a little bit of yeah, the system's a little bit funny, but generally speaking, it just works itself out. So
Okay.
I would say the other thing too that's probably a bigger misunderstanding is how many young bears big mature bears kill, and how many ungulates big mature bears kill, and they're a pretty heavily impactful creature to have just roaming loose, and they kill a lot of moose calves and a lot of caribou and a lot of young bears. So really, harvesting old bears makes more bears, and it also saves a lot of moose and a lot of caribou. And in areas, areas where we're hunting them, I mean, it's crazy. We had one camp last year on a bear hunt where they had a total of 9,000 cubs in one viewfinder of a spotting scope at one time. So that's 3 different sows with appropriate number of cubs equaling 9 on one mountainside eating berries at the same time. And it's about available feed, but that's not normal, right? That's a lot of bears packed into a small area, but they really cycle around. So I do standalone bear hunts right at the end of August when the berry crop is starting to get frost. And that's when we start to see boars. I find a lot of the bears you see early are sows and cubs because they're up in the high country, and the boars aren't really interested in being exposed, right?
Okay.
But then as soon as the berries get good enough that the risk reward factor starts to play on their favor, then they come out of the creek bottoms and out of the thick draws, and they start to go feed to put the weight on, and then that's when we target them, and it's been really good. I mean, we do 1 or 2 a year, and we generally get a decent bear, and that's kind of the way I hunt them. I do a spring bear hunt I have one this year, next month, and they're forever hard to time. Like we have
Yeah.
winter that just doesn't want to leave. Last year we put the hunt off 2 weeks and the ice on the river didn't leave, and we ended up not being able to boat up the river. The ice was easily a month late coming off the water. And so we had to pivot, and it just gets really, really hard to kind of bank on how the hunt's going to go and where you're going to go, even if you can even get in there. Right. So, if the ice on the creek flooded the river bottom and messed up my airstrip and I can't land because there's 4-foot ice on the strip, even if there's no snow, you still can't get in. Right. So I'm kind of shying away from those just because they're effective and you have success, but they're just a lot of work for, especially in that time of year when it'd be nice to just focus on other things. So, but it's a nice time of year to be out just the same. So if I got a hunter that's super keen on spring, we'll go do it in the spring. But
What would have them keen on doing a spring grizzly bear over a fall one?
It sort of depends. That August, we're far enough north that our hides are okay at the end of August, but our hide, they're not like a spring hide. They're certainly shorter than that. So hide is one activity. The other thing is I mean, it's just kind of tradition. Spring bear is when you go do them and you've always done them. And there's a lot of that, and that guys don't really know or understand the nuance between where I am and, we're not hunting. I mean, I guided grizzly bear in BC when it was open and in those days, and we don't have in my area the rock slides that you guys would have, or you'd go find the first hill that would green up. And I mean, there's country that I used to guide in BC where you could see 10 bears a day. Like it was incredible, like phenomenal, like the dreamy type of grizzly bear hunting. Right. And we don't have that here. It's quite a bit more work here. It's just more of they don't really get the difference. Right.
So for doing those grizzly bear hunts and as many times as you've got to do it, you got a story of when it went a little Western?
Oh, shoot. I mean, most of my Western grizzly bear hunts were not when we were hunting them. Generally, when you're trying to hunt bears, you're kind of prepared for, you're thinking through and paying attention, and so you don't usually get yourself in a pickle. But I did have a hunter that, a big bear we chased for, oh man, years and years and years. And I only saw tracks, and we only hunt sign. You kind of hunt these big swamps and just looking for diggings and fresh bear sign. And I think I looked for this bear for probably 5 or 6 different hunts and never ever found him. And then found him one year, and we were up on this big kind of a horseshoe cirque bend, and the winds were howling. And for some reason, this bear got caught out in the open. And my hunter laid down, and he was a pretty good marksman, and so he shot the tree over its back like you'd expect. And it was so windy that bear didn't know what to do, and he turned and came straight back into this, like right towards us in this little thick patch of woods.
Sweet.
And he ended up, and we were high, like probably 100 yards above him. Okay. And we laid on our bellies, and this bear never cleared the thick bush, but he ended up laying up, and I could just with my spot and scope see hair blowing under a tree. And we laid on that bear for probably 2 hours before he stood up and actually confirmed that was him. And he turned around and laid back down. And then probably another hour. So the total about 3 hours before he stuck his head out of the trees and like really cautious, hey? And was so incredibly smart. And then when he cleared the trees, my client got him, and he was probably right on 9 feet. For an interior grizzly, he was enormous.
Yeah.
But, they're just so incredibly smart. Just so incredibly smart. And, he zigged when he should have zagged, and he knew it. And he spent 3 hours under a tree hoping we didn't see where he went and just leaving it be, right? Yeah. So, but they're so funny. Like I've had them come, other bears where we would hunt for 10 days, hunting a specific track and not ever get a shot at that bear, only to be when the hunt was over and the hunter went home, I'd go back to take camp down and he'd be sitting on his bum in camp just looking at us in the middle of the daytime, and they're just wickedly intelligent. So, yeah, it's really interesting to kind of watch. They know you're there, very, very soon.
There's something that, yeah, like I said, if it comes back to BC, I'm going to be all over that, all about it.
Yeah.
Let's chat moose real quick. What's moose hunting in the territory like?
Oh, it's in our concession, I always say it's so good sheep guides can kill moose. And that's a knock on me more than anybody, but this is pretty magical moose hunting. And if Tombstone has probably a poster child, it is probably the moose. I mean, the whole thing's a sea of moose food. There's willow and buckbrush for 4,000 square miles. It's a super scenic, because I'm mostly mountains. We're hunting all these higher drainages without big timber. So if the rut's not rocking and rolling, you can crawl up on a hill and generally find them with your glass. So it's a really interactive moose hunt. You're not stuck in the side of a lake, calling into a spruce forest, waiting to hear a horn or a grunt, right? So it's probably the most relaxing guiding we have, because you can almost always dig them up if they're not cooperating. Seldom do we have 10 days where guys just struggle and can't find moose, because you can always just crawl a little higher and glass a little farther and figure it out. Hey? So, and and our moose these northern moose body wise are, man, significantly bigger bodied than even southern Yukon moose. So, like, you literally can't fit a hindquarter down the throat of a Mystery Ranch backpack. Like, they're just that much bigger. Hey,
Nice.
So,
That's awesome. What do you think when guys come up to the Yukon? What surprises them the most when they come out to hunt with you?
probably how small they feel. Like, you can't really prep guys for what remoteness is. And like in the world of the North, the Dempster splits me in two pieces. So, I have the significant ease of being able to get moose and gear and stuff in and out without 150-mile legs in my airplane, right? So they're still far, but when you fly for 45 minutes over the mountains through the wilderness and land on a dirty little gravel strip, you're literally the only one. And that kind of, that aloneness of just being out there with your guide and a wrangler and yourself is probably the bigger mental play for the clients. I mean, a lot of guys just can't handle it. And a lot of outfits have camps where they'll have 2 or 3 hunters in a camp, and it's a kind of a bigger, more robust, place where I hunt one guy at a time in particular in any given camp. So you're never going a direction that someone else just was the day before. You've got 10 days to yourself with your crew, and the moose you end up killing isn't a moose that someone else turned down 3 days earlier, right? It's so that aspect is what I'm selling and marketing, and that's why we can kind of have a super high quality, high success, true wilderness experience that really you don't share with anybody else. It's just you. The whole adventure is yours, right?
Yeah.
So,
Is there a personality type that you've seen that does well with that remoteness?
I mean, funny, the industry largely, personality hunters tend to be personality of the outfitter, and the old birds of a feather,
Yeah.
statement is so true. And I find that 90% of the hunters that I get are similar in kind of thought and like morals and ethics, and as myself. And so they tend to kind of gravitate just organically through the booking process, and as the guy booking the hunts and selling the hunts to the hunters. And we weed a lot of those guys out, and they're not necessarily, if they don't like your program for whatever reason, they end up going somewhere. And I've guided many different places, and it's true right across the board. Everywhere I wind up, it's largely, if the outfitters have pretty big personality. They have a lot of big personality hunters, and it just seems to follow itself in a circle. Hey,
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense for sure. Is there questions that you think guys need to be better at asking to get that personality fit right?
I mean, as far as a hunter's perspective, not really. These guys, the guys that we see on average, they're really astute types of people, and they're fairly well off. They have the means to hunt here. We're the more expensive place to be in North America. So by default, these clientele they've got a pretty good skill to detect. I don't know, call it a BS detector, but they know how to navigate humans, and they know when they're being fed a story, and they're pretty astute clients. So yeah, I always tell the clients that are humming and hawing and talking about one or two other places they might go. So if you relate in the north with a northern outfitter, if you like the guy you're talking to and you appreciate his story, you'll have a great hunt. There isn't a bad one in the bunch that is just gonna have a catastrophe. It's more your perspective as a client showing up. The areas are good, and the outfitters know what they're doing. They're all good. They're all good people, working real hard with experience. So it's more so find a place that you're happy, and then just that alone will give you the kind of the perspective to have a good trip, right?
I like that. What are some of your most memorable hunt stories, either from your outfit or from your guiding career?
Probably easily my most memorable. Shoot, this would be going way back now. This will be how many years? Boy, 20, 27 years this year. So Jack and Eleanor O'Connor, the renowned outdoor writer and kind of the pioneer of sheep hunting in the north. So
Yeah.
when they passed away, in their will, they were wanting to have their ashes spread in the mountains where they hunted sheep in Yukon. And I was asked to guide a hunt with a living friend of theirs, who's Buck Buckner, who's become a really gem of an old friend of mine. He's really involved with Boone and Crockett, but he came up and had all of Jack and Eleanor's black and white photos of their sheep hunting days in the mountains where they guided. And every day we would jump on a string of horses. My wife was working with me. It was her and I in camp that year. And so every day we would just look at a photo in the cabin and kind of go revisit and retrace the steps. And I'd been in that country a long time, so I could identify from the photos where it was. And we would I think we hunted 9 days and turned down all kinds of rams and killed a 39.5-inch 10-year-old on the second last day. And it was just kind of everything clicked, eh? And then we went and spread Jack and Eleanor's ashes in the mountains, and just kind of, it was a pretty unreal experience, especially for someone like myself the sheep mountains are so vital to kind of shaping my life that, it's pretty much a career topper. So
I know you can't see my arms right now, but I got goosebumps on that one, Russ.
yeah,
That's a super special story, and honestly feels like a part of history. If anybody's into sheep, they know the name Jack O'Connor.
yeah,
Involved in such a special part of that.
yeah.
Yeah, there's no words there.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how that hunt wrapped up, how you guys found that ram, what he was doing, what the stock went on. Run me through that.
I mean, Buck was Jack's son's friend. That was kind of the connection with the O'Connors. And if I'm not mistaken, he even came up with one of Jack's 270s. It was kind of, the whole thing was built around just being Buck was a purist and an old cowboy, and just like just a gem of a man. He'd kind of been all over the world, and I was fairly young at that stage in my career, but he was really gracious just to jump in my hip pocket and grind it out. But he was being really fussy and turning down a a lot of rams. He was at the stage in his life where I didn't think he'd be turning sheep down that had age, but he just wanted to. And so we just kept revisiting every different block, and just kept checking all my old haunts. And the ram we found was weird. It was just way down on the backside of this. There's kind of this mountain that we were on. It's a really big mountain, and it just peters out and fades off. It's kind of rolly country and fades off into the willows. And he was just on the backside of the mountain, not visible from kind of anywhere where we can hunt. And it's a big valley to look back into it. So I was just ridge running and poke checking down, and they were just barely above the tree line, and found this band of rams. And so it was kind of we didn't really have time to sit back and do that classic sheep stalk where you set your scope up and drool on them and make a play. It was sort of, I think I found them at 500 or 600 yards, and we just belly crawled through the rolly, soft, kind of that flat kind of mountain. And yeah, sat there and had a little powwow about it. And next thing you know, it was all over. So, it was kind of almost anticlimactic, especially because the block we were in, I mean, I had so much history in there hunting sheep, and these rams I'd never seen. I mean, I think I took five rams a year out of that block over the course of 2 months, and I did it year after year after year, and I'd never seen this ram. So it just kind of showed up from who knows where, and wasn't a particularly showy ram, just a big, deep curled, lots of mass, kind of stopped at his nose, but just a real big sheep, eh? So,
And is that what got Buck to pull the trigger on him? Was he just
yeah, he was just perfect. I mean, heavy. He likes big stuff too. I mean, he's Boone and Crockett, so he loves big stuff.
Yeah.
But and he recognized it. I'm always scared to overestimate, especially when I was young. I'd always leave an inch in my pocket, and I think I told him it was 37 or 38, and he knew I was lying. But you just kind of didn't want to get ahead of yourself, especially when you find them close and they're moving, and you don't get to really look at them bed, and you kind of have to just go with your guts. And because the difference between, I mean, I've been lucky enough to kill rams in that country with 15-inch bases. So, but if he's 14 or if he's 13 instead of 14-inch bases, I mean, that takes a 37-inch ram that's 14.5-inch bases is actually pushing 40 just with that same horn configuration, just because of the mass. Eh?
Okay.
So that's kind of that. But
nice. And what was his reaction when he walked up on the ram?
He's such an I don't know how to explain it. He didn't really do much. Didn't really say much. It was just kind of, he's a pretty solemn kind of guy, not a big emotion guy. So it was just kind of, I don't remember. It wasn't all that significant of a memory. It was just sort of, he was just pumped to be there, and
Take it in.
and it was a long, like that block, like shoot, when I kill a ram on that block, it usually takes a solid 6 hours on horse to get back to the other drainage. So I think anytime we kill a ram over there, we're not getting back to camp until 6 or 7 the next morning. It's a guaranteed to be a backbuster. Hey, but sit on a horse in the dark for a whole night and magically wind up where you're supposed to be, right?
Oh, it's amazing how they just know.
Yeah,
right? They know the way back, which is nice.
Yeah. Hang your reins up and pretend you're good.
That's awesome. So what do you think separates a good client from a great one in your eyes?
I mean, we're in the adventure making business, so 100% it's kind of their attitude of being able to roll with it. Like there's 90% of a hunt we don't control. I always say we need to bolt down all the variables that I can control, which are very few. And then the rest of it, we just have to take with it what comes, right? And so the guys that are willing to just see the experience and are there to enjoy kind of the culture of it, the beauty of it, the grind, as well as the ups, it just can't all be easy and fun, right? And in the end, I always say the quality of the memory has a direct correlation to the quantity of the suffering. So if if you can suffer with a smile on your face, the memory is way better. So that's probably the difference there.
Got to embrace that type 2 fun.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even know if it is type 2 fun. It's just suffering, but it's a good suffering, right?
Yeah. So many different things to go on and talk about. What's a topic that you'd like to cover that we haven't touched on yet?
Oh man, I don't know. To me, the whole business, like I said, it's more of the dream making business. People think it's just all roses and smiles, and like, my crew, as I've gotten older and now this role as an owner and an operator, the part that I find joy now, I don't have a lot of time to guide anymore, especially with doing all the flying and all the shoeing and just overseeing everything and keeping all the pieces moving is watching these young guys that, I mean, I'm sure I was similar. Um, yeah, 27 years ago, right? And just kind of finding the crew that you can mold and shape and the ones that are hungry and giving them a chance to grow. And, that's the side of the business that I enjoy now. And like, man, I've got some of my crew, they'll just break their back just to make you happy. Cause they just want to get there and do it so bad. It's always a full circle. I always say that the wranglers, they just want to be guides, and guides just want to be outfitters, and outfitters just want to be wranglers. That's kind of where I'm phasing back to. It's like, I can see a day coming where I'll just go catch horses and not worry about it anymore. So
Yeah. Have somebody in the office and you're just out there making the
oh,
coffee.
yeah, the office is no place for humans for sure.
Right on, Russ. Well, I absolutely loved the conversation. This was a lot of fun for me. So really appreciate the time. If somebody hears this and they're like, man, I connect with Russ, I got to get in touch with Tombstone. What's the best way guys can find you? Get in touch.
Phoning, go on the website, pull off my phone number. I get a dozens of emails. I try and respond to emails as quick as I can, but honestly, you just need to pick up the phone and make a phone call and talk your way through and yeah, get to know each other over the phone first and then we'll move on. So
Nice. I love it. I do have one more question. When guys are coming up, let's run through the different cartridge selection conversation. What do you suggesting guys bring? Let's hit the grizzly bear first. If somebody wants to go out and they want to buy a gun specifically for the grizzly hunt, is there a cartridge that you're gonna steer them towards or recommend?
I mean, I'm a real simple. I make real simple recommendations. So it's, what do you shoot the best?
Mm,
And that's what I want you to use. And our bears here, like, we're almost subarctic bears. Like, they're not big. Like I don't. The biggest we usually kill in this country is kind of 8 feet's the top end, and
okay.
like a 6.5 or 7 foot boar can be 20 years old. Like, they're just
Cool.
not big bodies. So now that being said, they're tough, right? So I like a 30 cal, but I would way rather you pick something out of your gun cabinet that you've shot lots, that you know how it works, and use that. And I had a client one year that, as turrets and long range became a thing, and hunters didn't grow up hunting like we did, as a kid with a BB gun, shooting rocks and moving on.
Yeah.
And he had a ram at, what was it, 294 yards, and he needed to back up 6 more yards because he didn't have a 294 yard turret. And that's where we're getting now in this industry. And it's like, it's like, yikes, we don't understand the concept anymore, right? And that's not nearly everyone, but there's a big disconnect, because a lot of the clients now are, I've got a really good client who took up hunting as an adult, and
Okay.
that's when it came upon him, and so he didn't grow up and learn all the steps and like safety and gun handling and all those things. They just start as an adult. And so you always take for granted that guys will just grab a gun that they're good at shooting and go with it, right? And I'd rather you not pack a 338 that rattles your fillings and you're scared of, because it's just not going to work out, right?
Yeah, being able to put that bullet where it needs to be when the time comes is
100%.
kind of everything.
Far more important than a bigger bullet, but yeah.
Nice. Well, I appreciate that answer only because it goes along with kind of my thinking. That confirmation bias is always great.
Yeah.
Somebody say what you want to hear. But yeah, no, that's an interesting one because, I look at the wide variety of animals that people can come up and hunt. And if they did want to spend some time up there and do more than one species or whatever, it'd be kind of weird to bring more than one rifle. So if the simple solution is in your safe, what you know best, maybe what's going to cycle the ammo real smooth.
Yeah.
Maybe an interesting point to think about as well when you're choosing. But yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense to me.
As long as it's not a 300 Savage,
Okay.
Not to pick on the Savage, but I had a guy bring a 300 Savage on a sheep hunt, and he had an entire gun cabinet full of guns, and somehow he brought that. And anyways, it's a long story, but
if you got time, let's hear it.
He could shoot it real fast. So it was interesting. He was in Vietnam, and a lot of the guys in that era, they had a lot of trauma from that.
Sure.
And we got on this ram, and he had a video camera, and he asked my wrangler to video it.
Okay.
And so we must have been 150 yards from this ram, and it's a lever gun. And in the blink of an eye, his gun was empty. And that ram was standing there, didn't even know he shot 4 times. And the guy's eyes glazed over, and he just started throwing lead. It happened so fast he couldn't see what was going on. And so then I grabbed his bullets away from him, and I would just give him one at a time. And he'd open, put it in, shoot one, and then open, put it in, shoot one. And he hit that ram. Again, it wasn't far. And that ram, he was missing by so much that ram didn't even run away. It just stood there, and finally got it killed. But, it was absolutely the wrong gun for the hunt. And I don't know, it left a bad taste in my mouth anyways, put it that way. But
all right, so scrap those 300 Savages.
Scrap the 300 Savage, yeah.
Right on, Russ. Well, I think that's a great place to leave it for tonight. Again, really appreciate it, and thank you for the time.
Yep, thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Let's Go Guided. If you enjoyed it, make sure you follow along and share it with someone who's planning their next hunt. See you on the next one.